There is a moment in every person's life where the ground beneath them shifts so suddenly, so completely, that they don't even register the fall until they are already at the bottom. For Marcus Delaney, that moment didn't come with a warning. It didn't come with an argument, a slammed door, or a dramatic final scene. It came on a quiet Tuesday morning in March, in a small apartment in Cincinnati, Ohio, with 2 cereal bowls on the table, a permission slip that nobody had signed, and a set of divorce papers sitting underneath it like they were just another piece of mail. Marcus was 32 years old. He had $22 in his checking account. His daughter Imani was 6. His son Darius was 4. And the woman he had built his entire adult life around had just decided, quietly and without ceremony, that she was done. Everyone who heard what happened next said the same thing. They said Marcus would not last. They said the children would suffer. They said a broke man with no support system, no savings, and no roadmap had no business raising 2 small children on his own. His neighbors said it. His coworkers said it. His own mother looked him in the eye and told him directly that the kindest thing he could do for those children was to let someone else take over. And for a long time, the world looked at Marcus Delaney and saw exactly what it had been conditioned to see, a man who had already lost. But the world was not watching closely enough. Because what Marcus Delaney did over the next 5 years was not just survive. It was not just manage. What he did was something so quietly extraordinary, so completely unexpected, that when the full picture finally came into view, in a courtroom, in front of a judge who had seen everything, there was not a single person in that room who was not moved. This is that story, and I need you to stay with me, because I promise you, the moment this story turns, you will not see it coming. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. If you are watching this right now, wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is for you, drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from. We genuinely love hearing from this community. And if you are not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Stories like this one are what we do here, and there is so much more coming. To understand what Marcus Delaney walked into on that March morning, you have to understand who Marcus Delaney was before any of it happened. Because the man that the world would later underestimate was not born into hardship as some romantic origin story. He was born into the particular, grinding kind of difficulty that doesn't make headlines and doesn't generate sympathy. The kind that is just quietly present every single day in millions of American households, and that most people learn to work around rather than talk about. Marcus grew up in a neighborhood on the west side of Cincinnati where ambition was not exactly discouraged, but it was not exactly celebrated either. You learned early that working hard was necessary, but that working hard did not guarantee anything. His father, a man named Raymond Delaney, held 2 jobs for most of Marcus's childhood, a day shift at a packaging plant and a weekend security position at a mall that had seen better days. Raymond Delaney was not an absent father. He was a present, exhausted one. And there is a particular kind of love in a man who shows up every single day, even when showing up costs him everything he has. Marcus's mother, Gloria Delaney, cleaned office buildings at night and raised 3 children during the day. She was the woman who made sure homework got done, who sat at parent-teacher conferences in her work uniform because there was no time to go home and change, who knew every teacher's name and every bus schedule and every trick for making a small grocery budget feel like more than it was. Gloria Delaney was formidable in the way that women who have never been allowed to be fragile become formidable. She was not warm in the way that people expect mothers to be warm on television. She was warm in the way that matters. She was present, she was consistent, and she never let her children feel, for a single day, that they were alone in the world. Marcus watched his parents, and he absorbed 2 things simultaneously. The first was that love, real love, is an action and not a feeling. The second was that the life they were living, as good as it was in the ways that counted, was not the life he wanted to replicate in every detail. He wanted more, not in a way that dismissed what his parents had built, in a way that honored it by trying to build further. By the time Marcus was in his mid-20s, he had held himself together well enough to land a steady position in logistics and supply chain management at a mid-sized distribution company in the greater Cincinnati area. It was not glamorous work, and it was not the kind of job that made for a compelling story at dinner parties, but Marcus was good at it. He understood systems. He understood how things moved from one place to another, how inefficiencies compounded, how small breakdowns in process created large losses downstream. He was the kind of employee that managers relied on quietly and promoted slowly, which is a particular kind of professional purgatory that hard-working people in working-class industries know well. He was making enough to live, enough to save a little, and enough to believe that the trajectory was moving in the right direction. And then he met Renee Caldwell, and for a while, it felt like the trajectory wasn't just moving in the right direction, it was accelerating. Renee Caldwell was everything that Marcus had not expected to find in the specific geography of his life. She was sharp, professionally polished, and possessed of the kind of social fluency that made every room she entered feel slightly more alive. She worked in marketing, corporate marketing, the kind that required strategy and presentation and the ability to speak with authority in rooms full of people who were looking for reasons not to listen. And Renee was good at it. She was very good at it. Her colleagues used words like driven and magnetic and relentless, and those words were accurate in the way that compliments about ambition are often accurate. They described something real while also leaving something important unnamed. Because alongside the drive and the magnetism and the relentlessness, there was something else in Renee Caldwell that the people who worked with her did not always see. Her mother saw it. Her mother, a quiet and perceptive woman named Dolores, had a single word for it that she used carefully and never unkindly. She called her daughter restless, not in the way of someone who was lazy or ungrateful, in the way of someone for whom stillness felt, at a cellular level, like a form of danger. Renee was always moving toward the next thing. And for a while, for the most important while of both their lives, the next thing was Marcus. They met at a mutual friend's birthday gathering in the summer. Marcus would later describe the moment he first saw Renee as the moment he understood what people meant when they said a room changed when someone walked into it. He was not a man given to dramatic declarations, so the fact that he reached for that kind of language tells you something about what he felt. They dated for a year and a half of weekend drives and conversations that went until 2 a.m, and the specific, intoxicating feeling of believing that you have finally found the person who makes the rest of your life make sense. Marcus proposed at a restaurant that was slightly out of his budget and would later admit he had checked and rechecked the menu prices before deciding it was worth it. Renee said yes before he had finished asking. They married the following spring. Their daughter Imani was born 14 months later. Their son Darius arrived 2 years after that. And for a window of time that Marcus would later describe as the best season of his life, everything felt like it was finally becoming what it was supposed to be. But there is a difference between a life that looks like it is working and a life that actually is. And the distance between those two things, in the Delaney household, had been growing quietly for longer than either of them had been willing to acknowledge. The cracks did not announce themselves. They did not arrive in a single fight or a single betrayal. They arrived the way most serious damage arrives in a marriage, slowly, through accumulation, through the small daily choices that each feel insignificant in isolation and only reveal their full weight when you step back far enough to see the pattern. Renee had put her career on pause for the pregnancies. She had told Marcus that she wanted to, and in some genuine part of herself, that was true. But the pausing had cost her something she had not fully accounted for. The version of herself that she had spent her entire adult life building. The professional, the strategist, the woman whose name people recognized in certain rooms. That version was receding. And the further it receded, the more Renee reached for it. The longer hours, the work trips that stretched an extra day, the phone calls in the hallway, speaking in a register that belonged to a life separate from the one she had inside that apartment. Marcus noticed. Of course he noticed. He was not an oblivious man. But Marcus was also working back-to-back shifts during a period where his company had cut hours and he had taken a second part-time position to compensate. And by the time he came home each evening, he was operating on a level of exhaustion that made even the things he saw clearly feel too heavy to address. So he kept moving. He fed the children and gave baths and packed lunches and got through the mornings. And he told himself that the tension between him and Renee was temporary, that marriages had seasons, that they would find their way back to each other when the pressure lifted. What he did not understand, and what he would not fully understand for several years, was that for Renee, the pressure was not the problem. The pressure was the symptom. The problem was something she could not resolve inside the boundaries of the life they had built together. And by the time Marcus was close enough to the edge of understanding that to do something about it, The divorce papers were already with the attorney. The filing came on a Tuesday in March. Marcus found the papers on the kitchen counter when he came home from a double shift, and he stood in the kitchen for a long moment reading them with Darius asleep on his shoulder because the babysitter had already left and there was nobody else. He would later say that his first clear thought was not about himself. It was about the children. He stood in that kitchen and he thought, what do I tell them? Not what do I do, not where do I go, not how do I afford this. What do I tell my children? That singular prioritization, the way his mind went immediately to Imani and Darius and stayed there, would turn out to be one of the most important things about Marcus Delaney. It was not something he performed for anyone. There was no one watching. It was simply where his mind went, and it went there first, and it would keep going there first, every single time, for the next 5 years. The divorce proceedings were not vicious, but they were clarifying. Renee's attorney made the argument for primary custody on her behalf, and the argument was structurally sound. She had the higher income. She had the more flexible schedule. She had, on paper, the more stable situation. Marcus, working 2 jobs and earning less, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, could not easily compete with that on paper. The judge reviewed the filings and awarded primary custody to Renee. And Marcus, who had prepared himself for that possibility, accepted it because he was realistic and because he trusted that his children would be cared for, and because he was trying, even in the worst moment of his life, to do the right thing. But then something happened that nobody, not the attorney, not the judge, not Marcus's family, not a single person involved in that proceeding, had anticipated. Renee did not want primary custody. She wanted a clean break. She wanted the space and the freedom and the forward momentum that her entire professional life had been building toward, and she understood, in a way that was honest even if it was also painful, that primary custody of 2 small children was not compatible with the version of her life she was trying to rebuild. And so within 60 days of the divorce being finalized, Renee Caldwell accepted a senior position at a marketing firm in Atlanta, packed 2 suitcases, and left her children in Cincinnati with the man that the court had just spent 3 months arguing was the less capable parent. Marcus Delaney was now a single father, and every single person in his life looked at him and arrived at the same conclusion. He would not last 6 months. His neighbor, a woman named Barbara who had lived in the building for 12 years and considered herself a reasonable judge of character, gave him 4 months. She said it kindly. She was not a cruel woman, but she said it clearly. She told her sister on the phone that she felt terrible for those children and that someone was going to need to step in. Marcus's coworker at the warehouse, a man named Terry who had known him for 3 years, took a collection among the crew so that Marcus could cover his first month of grocery bills and told him privately that if it got too hard, nobody would think less of him for asking family to help raise the kids. His own sister, Patricia, who lived 40 minutes away and loved her brother genuinely and fiercely, sat across from him at her kitchen table 2 weeks after Renee left and said the thing that nobody else had the courage to say directly. She said, "Marcus, you need to think seriously about whether you can actually do this." She wasn't wrong to ask. She was looking at the numbers, the rent, the bills, the childcare costs, the income, the fact that his car needed a new alternator that he could not currently afford, and she was doing the math that love does not always want to do. And what she found when she did that math was that it did not add up. Not even close. Marcus heard all of it. He heard Barbara. He heard Terry. He heard Patricia. He heard his mother, Gloria, who sat down with him that first Sunday after Renee left and told him, with the particular plain-spoken authority that she had carried his entire life, that the most loving thing he could do for Imani and Darius was to be honest about his limitations. Gloria Delaney was not a woman who said things she did not mean, and she was not a woman who would have said that to hurt him. She said it because she believed it. She had watched her own family stretch thin under financial pressure for decades, and she knew what that pressure did to children, and she loved those grandchildren too much to pretend that love alone was sufficient. Marcus listened to her without interrupting. He always listened to his mother without interrupting, and when she was finished, he said something to her that she would repeat for the rest of her life. He said, "Mama, you are probably right about most of that, but those children are not a burden I am carrying. They are the reason I am going to figure this out." And then he got up, drove back to his apartment, put Imani and Darius to bed, sat at the kitchen table until almost midnight making a budget on a legal pad, and decided, in the quiet of that apartment, that the world was going to have to find a different story to tell about Marcus Delaney. What broke looked like in practical terms during that first year is worth describing carefully, because the details matter. Marcus was earning $22 an hour at the warehouse with overtime when he could get it, which was not always. The child support payments that had been court-ordered from Renee came inconsistently, sometimes on time, sometimes weeks late, sometimes not at all for a stretch that forced Marcus to cover the gap with nothing but the overtime he had already pushed his body to its limit to work. His apartment was a one-bedroom. He gave the bedroom to the children. He slept on a pull-out couch that had a bar in the middle that left a bruise across his lower back every morning for 2 years, and he never mentioned it to anyone. Imani needed glasses. The school sent home a note after a vision screening, and Marcus took her to 3 different optometrists before he found one that accepted the insurance plan his employer offered, and even then there was a copay he managed by putting off the car repair for another month. Darius had developed a stutter, not severe, but noticeable, the kind that a speech therapist could address, and the school had flagged it, and Marcus made the appointments and rearranged his schedule twice, and then a third time, and never once let Darius see him do the math around whether he could afford it. He applied for assistance. This is worth saying plainly because there is a particular kind of pride that men like Marcus Delaney carry, a pride built over decades by watching their fathers hold themselves together through sheer refusal, and that pride does not bend easily. But Marcus bent it. He walked into the county office with his income documentation and his children's birth certificates, and he sat in the plastic chair, and he waited, and he filled out every form they gave him without expression, because the children needed what the children needed, and his pride was not worth more than their stability. He found a church-run after-school program that would take both Imani and Darius at no cost until 6 in the evening. He mapped his work schedule around pickup times with the kind of precision that logistics professionals apply to supply chain problems, because that is what it was to him, a system that needed to function, and he was going to make it function. His coworkers took up a collection at Christmas for the children's gifts. Marcus cried in his car in the parking lot before he went inside to accept it. He was not ashamed of the tears. He was not ashamed of the help. He was overwhelmed by the kindness, and he let himself feel it for 4 minutes in that parking lot. And then he dried his face and went in and said thank you like he meant it, which he did. What the neighbors started to notice, gradually and then unmistakably, was that those children looked cared for. Imani always had her hair done. Not perfectly. Marcus was learning as he went, watching tutorial videos at 11 at night with the volume low so as not to wake anyone, using Imani's Barbie as practice because she had told him, with the bluntness that 6-year-olds specialize in, that he was messing it up. But he kept at it. Darius was always clean and always had what he needed in his backpack. Both children were always on time for school. There was something in the way they moved through the world, a groundedness, a security, a sense of being held even in difficult circumstances, that people who knew children recognized as the signature of a child who was genuinely loved and consistently shown up for. Barbara, the neighbor who had given Marcus 4 months, found herself revising her estimate quietly and without announcement. She started leaving meals outside his door on Wednesday evenings when she made extra, and she never said anything about it, and neither did Marcus. And that wordless exchange between 2 people who had found a new kind of respect for each other across an apartment hallway became one of the small dignities of that period. But the world outside that building was still watching with the particular kind of skepticism that is reserved for situations that confound expectation. Social workers who conducted routine check-ins found nothing to report, and then found less and less with each visit, and eventually found a home that was small and sparse, but consistently safe and consistently loving, and closed the file with nothing but notations of compliance and adequacy that, given the circumstances, amounted to something far more significant than the dry language of the report suggested. Teachers at Imani's school, and later at Darius's, noted that both children were emotionally regulated, socially engaged, and academically on track. Imani's 2nd grade teacher wrote in a year-end note that Imani was one of the most resilient and joyful children she had taught in 15 years in the classroom, and she added, almost as an aside, that her father was clearly doing something right. Marcus kept that note. He still has it. Renee, in Atlanta, was building the life she had always planned. A senior position with a salary that reflected her talents. A modern apartment with a city view that she had decorated deliberately and well. A social life built around professional ambition and forward motion, and the kind of carefully curated busyness that keeps certain kinds of grief at bay. She had friends who knew her as Renee Caldwell, the marketing executive, not as Renee Caldwell, the mother who had left, and in those friendships she could be, for hours at a time, entirely the version of herself she had been working toward for years. But the version of herself she was working toward had a quality that she had not fully accounted for. It was always arriving. It was never quite there. The apartment was beautiful and quiet, and the quiet, particularly at certain hours of the day, had a texture that she had not anticipated. The phone calls to Cincinnati were inconsistent at first. Sometimes every week, sometimes a gap of 3 or 4 weeks, sometimes a month or more, where she told herself she was giving Marcus space to establish a routine and told herself that story just convincingly enough to get through the next stretch of silence. Imani stopped drawing pictures of her mother at school. Darius, when asked by a kindergarten teacher to draw his family, drew Marcus and himself and Imani. The teacher noted it in her records. Nobody called Atlanta, but something was shifting in Renee during that 3rd year. Whether it was the specific reckoning that tends to arrive for people in their late 30s, the moment when the future starts to feel like something you are already inside rather than something approaching, or whether it was something simpler and more honest than that, she began calling more regularly. She asked questions about Imani's glasses and Darius's speech therapy and how Marcus was managing the schedule. She asked in a way that was cautious, like someone who was not sure they had earned the right to ask, and Marcus answered in a way that was careful but not closed. He gave her the information she needed about the children, and he did it without weaponizing it, without using their needs as evidence against her, without doing any of the things that a man in his position would have been entirely justified in doing. He answered her questions about his children because she was their mother, and their mother wanting to know about them was, regardless of everything, a good thing for Imani and Darius. And then, almost 3 years after she had left, Renee asked if she could come back to Cincinnati to see them. Marcus, to the complete bewilderment of everyone who loved him, said yes. Patricia, his sister, had a very particular reaction to that yes. She called him for 40 minutes on a Tuesday evening and covered every angle of why that yes was a mistake, and her arguments were not unreasonable. She pointed out, carefully and with genuine love, that Renee had left 2 small children with a man who had nothing, that she had done it without a safety net, without a plan, without even a proper goodbye to the people she was leaving behind. She pointed out that Imani had cried for her mother for 6 weeks straight after the departure, and that Marcus had held her through it every night and had not once broken down in front of her even when Patricia knew, because she was his sister and she knew him, that he was breaking down in private. She pointed out that Darius had asked, in the flat and earnest way of 4-year-olds, whether mommy was coming back, and that Marcus had answered in a way that was honest without being devastating, and that answer, that careful, considered, emotionally attuned answer, had cost Marcus more than anyone would ever know. Patricia said, after all of that, she does not get to just come back when it is convenient. And Marcus listened to all of it with the same patience that had become his defining quality over the preceding years. And then he said something that Patricia would turn over in her mind for a long time afterward. He said, "Trish, this is not about what Renee gets. This is about what Imani and Darius get. And they get a mother who is trying. That is worth more to them than any decision I make to protect myself." Renee came to Cincinnati that fall and stayed in a hotel 4 blocks from Marcus's apartment. She took the children to the aquarium on a Saturday and to a pancake breakfast the following morning, and both outings were reported back to Marcus by Imani in the exhaustive and digressive detail that 9-year-olds deploy when they are processing something significant. Imani said the pancakes were good, but not as good as the ones Marcus made, which was both a review and a territorial declaration, and Marcus accepted it as both without comment. Darius, who was 7 by then and whose stutter had almost entirely resolved through 2 years of diligent therapy and Marcus's daily practice sessions, talked to Renee about his class hamster for 45 minutes in the car and did not mention her absence once, which could have meant many things, and Renee, in her hotel room that evening, understood that she was not going to be handed easy absolution. She had not expected to be. On the second evening of the visit, she asked Marcus if they could talk. No attorneys, no children present, just the 2 of them. the way they had once talked at a restaurant that had been slightly out of his budget. Marcus agreed. What happened in that conversation has never been fully disclosed by either of them. What is known is that it lasted 3 hours. What is known is that Renee apologized. What is known is that Marcus listened without interrupting. What is also known is that when his sister texted him at 11 in the evening asking if he was all right, he texted back 2 words, "I'm fine," and meant them in a way that was more complete than those 2 words usually carry. People who were watching closely started to wonder whether a reconciliation was coming, whether the arc of the story was bending back toward its beginning, whether Marcus and Renee were moving towards something that looked like a second chance. Several people told him directly that they hoped not. Terry from the warehouse said, with the blunt loyalty of a man who had watched Marcus go through the worst of it, that some things deserve to stay in the past. Patricia said something similar, with considerably more documentation. And even Barbara, the neighbor who had become something of a quiet supporter over the years, left a note with the Wednesday meal that said simply, "You have worked too hard to go backward." Marcus read it all. He heard it all. And then he made a decision that surprised everyone again, though perhaps it should not have by that point. He decided that what happened between him and Renee was, in an important sense, already settled. Not in the sense of forgiveness withheld or wounds kept open, but in the sense that the chapter had been written and what it contained was going to remain what it contained. What remained to be determined was what the next chapter would look like for the children. And he turned his attention, with the same methodical focus he had always brought to the systems and logistics of his life, toward figuring that out. But before any of that could fully take shape, something happened that nobody had anticipated. Not Renee, not Patricia, not Barbara, not Terry, not Gloria. Something arrived in the mail on a Thursday afternoon in November, in an envelope with an official seal that Marcus almost put aside with the bills before something made him look twice. He stood in the parking lot outside his building and opened it slowly, because he had learned by that point that news, good or bad, deserved to be received with steadiness. He read it once. Then he read it again. Then he stood in that parking lot for a long time, very still, in the early dark of a November evening, with the letter in his hands and the weight of everything it meant settling over him slowly. The way that significant things always seem to take their time arriving fully even when you are already holding them. 18 months earlier, Marcus had done something that he had not told anyone about. It had felt too fragile to say out loud, too much like a dream that would dissolve if exposed to the skepticism of people who loved him and would therefore want to protect him from disappointment. He had been taking online courses in the evenings and on weekend mornings while the children were still asleep. Business logistics first, because that was the territory he knew. Then supply chain management at a more advanced level. Then, almost as a dare to himself, an entrepreneurship certificate program offered through a state university's continuing education division. He had taken the courses with the disciplined, unhurried focus of a man who understood that he was not building toward a destination so much as he was building the capacity to recognize a destination when it appeared. And then, 18 months before that November evening in the parking lot, he had done one more thing. He had spent 11 nights working at the kitchen table after the children were asleep, cross-referencing documentation and refining arguments and reading sample applications with the same focused attention he gave to every system he wanted to understand. Filling out an application for a small business development grant offered through a city initiative targeting entrepreneurial individuals in underserved zip codes, with a specific track for single-parent households. He had submitted it. And then, with the kind of genuine self-protective realism that had kept him from shattering in harder moments, he had let it go. There were thousands of applicants. He was one man at a kitchen table at 11 at night. He filed his copy of the application in a folder and put it in the drawer and moved on. The letter said he had been selected. $40,000 in grant funding. Access to a business development mentor through a 12-month structured program. An invitation to join a cohort of 12 entrepreneurs who would spend 6 months building their companies alongside each other with professional support and accountability structures. Marcus read it 3 times in the parking lot. He stood there until the cold started to cut through his jacket. Then he went upstairs, made dinner. Pasta, because it was a pasta night, because the routine did not stop for anything, because the routine was part of what made everything else possible. And he helped Darius with his reading assignment and braided Imani's hair for the morning and listened to her describe with considerable theatrical investment. A conflict with her best friend that had apparently involved a misunderstanding about who had made the better paper crane in art class. He listened to all of it. He resolved the paper crane situation with the gravity it deserved. He put both children to bed and said their prayers with them and turned off the light and pulled the door almost closed, the way they liked it. Then he walked to the kitchen, sat down at the table, and let himself cry in a way that he had not allowed himself to cry since the very beginning of all of this. And anyone watching him in that moment would have understood immediately that these were not the same kind of tears as the ones at the beginning. These were entirely different. These were the tears of a man who had carried something too heavy for too long and had just been told he was allowed to put some of it down. The business Marcus built was not glamorous in its description. He launched a logistics consulting firm focused specifically on helping small businesses, most of them Black-owned. Many of them long-established family operations that had survived for decades on determination and community loyalty, but had always been disadvantaged in their relationships with larger distributors and shipping systems because they lacked the contractual knowledge and negotiating infrastructure that larger companies take for granted. Marcus knew that territory from the inside. He had spent a decade working inside distribution systems, and he understood where the leverage points were. And he understood that the businesses being left behind were not failing because they lacked quality or dedication or community standing. They were failing because nobody had ever translated the rules of the system into language they could use. That is what Marcus offered them. Not inspiration, not a motivational framework, a functional understanding of the systems that affected them, delivered with the patience and specificity of someone who had spent years learning to make complex things work under adverse conditions. In his first year, he signed for clients. The grant covered his overhead and part of his salary. He structured his schedule around school hours and used the after-school program he had relied on during the hardest years as the foundation of a childcare arrangement that still worked. In the second year, he signed 14 clients. He brought on a part-time contractor to handle invoicing and administrative operations. He moved the business out of his kitchen table and into a shared workspace that cost less per month than his car payment. In the third year, he signed a contract with a regional manufacturer that paid more in a single month than he had earned in his previous annual salary. He moved the family into a house, a real house, not large, not ostentatious, but with a bedroom for each child and a backyard that Darius immediately and non-negotiably designated as a soccer field. Marcus took the master bedroom. He slept in an actual bed for the first time in years. He told Patricia, when she came to see the house, that he had forgotten what it felt like to wake up without a bruise across his lower back. Patricia laughed for longer than the joke probably warranted, and Marcus understood that the laughter was not entirely about the joke. Imani was 11 by this point. Darius was 9. They had been watching their father transform for 3 years, and the transformation they had witnessed was not the kind that produces confusion in children, the kind where a parent changes so much they become someone new. It was the kind that produces pride, the kind where a person becomes more completely themselves, where the thing that was always in them finds more room. Imani, in a school assignment about a personal hero, wrote about Marcus. She did not describe him as successful or ambitious or any of the words that success stories tend to reach for. She described him as someone who always tried, even when it did not work, and who never made her feel like a problem to be solved. Her teacher sent Marcus a copy of the assignment with a handwritten note at the top that said simply, "You should have this." He kept it with the first note, in the same folder, in the same drawer. When the news of the business reached Atlanta, through a feature in a Cincinnati business journal, and then through a mention in a city council commendation for small business development, and then through the particular velocity of information that moves through social networks, when someone people have written off starts showing up in places they did not expect, Renee called Marcus. Not through an attorney, not through the careful mediated channel of formal co-parenting communication that they had established and maintained over the years. She called his number directly, the same number she had always had, and he answered, and what she said was not what he had expected. She did not ask for money. She did not raise the subject of custody. She said, and Marcus would remember this with specific clarity because he had not expected it, and because it had the quality of something that had been rehearsed many times and still did not come out easily. She said that she believed she had made the worst mistake of her life, and that she was not asking for anything in response to saying that. and that she did not know if there was anything that could be done about it at this point, but that she wanted him to know that she saw it. She wanted him to know that she understood, finally and completely, what she had walked away from. Not Marcus specifically, the children specifically, the daily, unremarkable, irreplaceable act of being there. Marcus was silent for a moment, and then he said something that, when Renee would later tell this story to people she trusted, she would describe as the thing that told her more about who he was than anything she had ever witnessed in the years they were together. He said, "Renee, the children want to know their mother. That has never changed. What that looks like now, at this point, is a conversation for them to be part of, not just us." He paused, and then he said, "I'm going to put Imani on." And he called his daughter's name, and he handed her the phone, and he walked to the kitchen and made himself a cup of coffee and gave them the space they needed, and he did not listen. He did not need to. Whatever happened in that conversation was going to happen in its own time and on its own terms, and his role in it was to make it possible and then step back. That was his role. That had always been his role. He was the one who made things possible. He had been doing it for 5 years. 2 years after that phone call, Marcus Delaney stood in a courtroom for the second time. Not because someone had taken him there, and not because of a dispute or a crisis or any of the adversarial reasons that courtrooms typically enter people's lives. He had filed a motion himself, through an attorney he could now afford, to formalize a parenting plan. Not to restrict anything. Not to seek retroactive enforcement of support orders that had been inconsistently followed, but to create a legal framework that accurately reflected the reality of his children's lives at that point. A framework that acknowledged a present and fully engaged father, an evolving and increasingly present mother who was finding her way back into the children's lives with their active participation, and 2 children who were, by every available measure, thriving. The plan proposed structured time with both parents, clear communication protocols, school calendar alignment, and a review mechanism to allow the arrangement to adapt as the children grew. It was the family court attorney who reviewed it before filing told Marcus, one of the most thoughtful and comprehensive parenting documents she had seen come through her office in years. She asked who had drafted it. He told her he had done most of it himself, with guidance. She looked at him for a moment in the way that people look at someone when they have just recalibrated their expectations, and then she told him it was ready to file. The judge assigned to the case was the same judge who had presided over the original divorce proceedings 5 years earlier. She had reviewed the original file as a matter of preparation and had arrived in the courtroom with a complete picture of where this family had started. She read the proposed parenting plan in full before addressing the parties. She looked at the documentation Marcus had maintained over the years, the school records and medical records and attendance logs and therapy notes and teacher correspondence, organized with the same systematic precision that he applied to every challenge that required management rather than emotion. She looked at the financial records that showed the arc from $22 in a checking account to a business with 9 employees and a regional manufacturing contract. She looked at Imani and Darius, who were seated in the gallery behind their father, both of them old enough by now to understand what the room meant even if they could not have articulated it. And then she looked at Marcus, and she said something that entered the official record of that proceeding. She said, "Mr. Delaney, this court has handled a great many custody and parenting matters over the years. What this file represents is not common. What you have given these children through circumstances that would have caused many people to make different choices is not common. This court is proud to approve and ratify this agreement." Marcus nodded once. He did not cry. He had done that privately, in advance, in the same way he had done most of the hard emotional work of the preceding years, alone, and then resolved, and then ready. Imani, seated directly behind him, reached forward and put her hand on his shoulder. Darius leaned close to his sister and said something in a whisper. She nodded. They both looked at their father with an expression that people in that courtroom who happened to glance back would later describe, when they told this story, as the kind of look that cannot be manufactured or performed. It was just love, uncomplicated and complete. Here is the part of the story that did not appear in the business journal. Here is the part that was not mentioned in the city council commendation. Here is the part that Marcus almost never talks about, not because he is ashamed of it, but because it belongs to a category of things that feel too important to handle carelessly. In the second year of the business, when the cash was tightest and Marcus was working at a pace that was not sustainable, and he knew it was not sustainable, and he kept going anyway because he did not have a choice. He got a phone call from his mother. Gloria had heard, through the family communication network, that mothers operate with a precision that rivals any professional intelligence system, exactly how close to the edge things were. She had heard about the months where the business payroll and the household budget were drawing from the same pool, and the pool was running low. She had heard about the weeks where Marcus was surviving on 5 hours of sleep and the particular focused calm of someone who has decided that falling apart is simply not an option available to him. She called him and she asked what she could do. Marcus said, "Mama, I have it handled." And Gloria Delaney, who had heard that sentence in various forms from her son for 40 years and had learned, over time, to recognize the ones that were true and the ones that were something else, said, "I know you do. And I'm coming anyway." She showed up the following Saturday. She showed up the Saturday after that. She showed up every Saturday for 11 months, taking the 40-minute drive from her neighborhood without complaint, watching Imani and Darius when Marcus had client meetings that ran late, cooking enough food on Saturday afternoons to carry the family through most of the week, driving Darius to his speech therapy appointments on the Tuesdays when Marcus had scheduling conflicts he could not resolve any other way. She did all of this without asking for acknowledgement, without revisiting the conversation she had once had with Marcus about giving up the children, without making any reference to any of it. She just showed up every Saturday, and she put her shoulder to the same wheel that Marcus had been pushing alone for years, and she pushed. At the one-year anniversary event for the business, a small gathering, held at the shared workspace that Marcus had grown out of but returned to for the occasion because it was where the thing had actually started, Marcus gave a brief speech. He thanked his clients. He thanked his mentor from the grant program, a man named Gerald Foster who had given him 30 minutes of his time every week for a year and who had told him, in their second session, that he was the most prepared entrepreneur he had worked with in the program and that the only thing standing between Marcus and his goal was time. Marcus thanked Gerald by name and meant every word. And then he said there was one more person. He said there was a woman who had once told him he could not do something and who had then spent 11 months making sure he could. He said, "My mother." Gloria Delaney stood in the back of that room, 71 years old, in the dress she had ironed that morning, and she cried in front of everyone present. She did not try to stop. She told a woman standing next to her, who had not asked and was slightly startled, that she was crying because she was proud. And then she added, with the same plain-spoken honesty that had always defined her, that she was also crying because she had almost told him to walk away from those children, and that she thanked God every day that he had not listened to her. We tell stories about single mothers constantly in this culture. The sacrifice, the endurance, the love that refuses to yield to circumstance. Those stories are true and they deserve every platform they receive. But we have a complicated and often incomplete relationship with stories about single fathers. We tend to cast them in one of two roles: the one who was never there, or the one who was so exceptional that the story becomes almost mythological, requiring superhuman qualities to be believed. We rarely allow a single father to be simply present, simply consistent, simply a man who decided that his children were going to be his first answer to every question the world put to him, and who held to that decision through the specific, unglamorous, daily difficulty of actually living it. Marcus Delaney was not a superhero. He was scared for extended periods of time and worked through it. He made parenting mistakes that Imani and Darius will one day have their own feelings about, as all children do. He had moments of doubt that he managed privately because there was no one available to manage them with him. He was not perfect. He was not trying to be perfect. He was trying to be present, and the difference between those two standards turns out to matter enormously when you are the person a child is counting on. What those children will carry forward from their childhoods is not primarily the story of a mother who left. Children are more generous than that. What they will carry is the story of a father who stayed, who tried, who learned how to braid hair badly and kept practicing until he got it right, who slept on a couch with a bar in the middle for 2 years so that they could have the bedroom, who cried in parking lots so that they never had to see him cry, who sat at kitchen tables late at night building things that nobody knew he was building until they were built. What they will carry is the knowledge, not the abstract kind, but the deep bodily kind that only comes from being shown rather than told, that they were worth every bit of it. That is what Marcus Delaney gave his children. Not money, not status, not a perfect outcome. The knowledge that they were worth it. There is nothing more important than that. There is nothing that matters more in the architecture of a human life than the early experience of being considered worth the effort by someone who did not have to try as hard as they did. So I want to leave you with something to sit with as you move through the rest of your day. Because I think this story is about more than one man and two children in Cincinnati. I think this story is about the way we look at people. The way we arrive at conclusions about who has what it takes and who doesn't, based on the evidence in front of us at a single moment in time. Without accounting for what people are capable of becoming under pressure, without accounting for the decisions they are making at 11 at night when nobody is watching, without accounting for the love that functions not as a feeling, but as a daily practice, quietly enacted, in a kitchen, in a parking lot, at a pull-out couch in a one-bedroom apartment, for years at a time, with nobody applauding and nothing guaranteed. How many Marcus Delaneys have you walked past and counted out? How many people in your life, or in the lives of people you know, did the world look at and say, they do not have what it takes? And how often, if you are willing to be honest with yourself, did the world get that completely, entirely, irreversibly wrong? What you believed about someone, at the end of the day, said more about where you were standing than it ever said about them. Wherever you are watching this from, thank you for staying until the end. This community means more than I can express in a closing. And if this story moved you in any way, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what stayed with you. Tell me who this reminded you of. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do, because the next story we are bringing you is one that will challenge everything you think you know about loyalty and about the people we choose to trust with the things that matter most. You will not want to miss it.